Hey everyone, welcome back. I know we're all busy, so let's just get right to it. Today, we're going to be looking at payroll management. Whether you're prepping for some big HR meeting or just trying to keep up with business stuff, or maybe you're just curious about how we all get paid. Well, today we're breaking down like all the essentials, what it is, why it even matters, and what you need to know.
It really is interesting when you think about it. I mean, payroll is kind of like the circulatory system of a business, right?
Okay,
It's
yeah.
constantly moving all this money around, making sure that everything is running smoothly.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I'm already like seeing payroll in a whole new light.
Yeah. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down. What is payroll management?
So at its core, payroll management is really all about managing employee compensation,
Right.
making sure everyone gets paid and it's accurate and on time, but also staying compliant with all those tax laws and labor regulations, all those things that are always changing.
Right.
So it's not just like handing out paychecks.
Oh, no.
There's a lot more going on, huh?
A lot more, yeah. It's about calculating wages and salaries, managing deductions for taxes and benefits, and making sure everything is aligning with all the legal requirements. So yeah, it's a complex system with a lot of moving parts.
Okay, so speaking of deductions, I know I always get kind of confused when I look at my pay stub. It's like a whole other language. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear ya. There's definitely a lot to unpack there. We're talking about, federal taxes, state taxes, and sometimes even local taxes, along with Social Security, Medicare, health insurance premiums, retirement contributions, and then depending on, your situation, potentially even more.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot more than I even realized. And
Mhm.
each of those deductions has its own set of rules and regulations.
Right, yeah. And they change constantly,
Right.
which is one of the biggest challenges for anyone managing payroll. But, pro tip, don't just blindly accept what you see on your pay stub, right?
Yeah.
Take some time to understand your deductions, what you're withholding, your overall compensation.
Yeah.
It can make a huge difference in your financial well-being.
That's a great point. It's really easy to just like glance at that final number and move on. But really understanding those details
Mm.
can empower you to, make informed decisions about your money. Now, you mentioned allowances earlier.
Yeah.
What are those? How do they factor into this whole compensation thing?
Yeah, so allowances are basically payments made to employees to cover specific expenses that are related to their job. They can be taxable, they can be non-taxable, and the rules around them can get really complicated.
Right.
For example, you might receive a travel allowance if your job requires you to travel a lot, or like a meal allowance if you're working late and you got to eat at the office, things like that.
Okay, so it's not just your base salary.
Right.
There's all these other factors that can impact how much you take home.
Exactly.
This is really making me think about my own pay stub in a new way.
Yeah.
I never realized like how much goes on behind the scenes.
It is. There's a lot back there. Yeah. Okay, so let's say you're offered this job with a great salary, but it doesn't include benefits or allowances. On the surface, that might seem like an amazing offer, but you gotta factor in those additional costs, right? It might not be as great as you thought.
Yeah, that's such a perfect example of why understanding like the details is so important. It's not just about the big number. It's about knowing what you're taking home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What's actually covered by your employer.
Exactly. And that brings us to another distinction, gross pay versus net pay.
Okay.
Gross pay is your total earnings before any deductions. So it's your base salary plus overtime bonuses, allowances, all of that.
Right.
But your net pay, that's what you're actually seeing in your bank account after all those deductions.
Right. The age-old question.
Yeah.
Why is the number on my paycheck always smaller than I expect? The net pay reality check.
Exactly. But understanding both is really important. Gross pay helps you understand your overall earning potential,
Yeah.
while your net pay reflects your actual take-home amount.
This is all making a lot more sense now, but it also sounds like there's a lot of room for error with all these calculations, all these changing regulations. I can only imagine.
You're not wrong. Accuracy is absolutely critical when we talk about payroll management.
Yeah.
Even a small mistake can really snowball into major problems, It can lead to employee dissatisfaction, compliance issues, legal trouble, all sorts of things.
So how do businesses even begin to manage all this?
Yeah.
Is it even possible to keep up with everything?
Well, that's where technology comes in. Payroll software, payroll systems have become essential tools for managing all these numbers and regulations.
Yeah.
They can automate those calculations,
Okay.
track working hours, manage deductions, and make sure that you're in compliance with the tax laws. all of that.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of some of these, ADP paychecks. They're everywhere these days. Do they really work, though?
They can be real game changers, especially for businesses that have large or complex payrolls.
Yeah.
These systems, they offer all these features and benefits like automated tax filing, direct deposit, even employee self-service portals where employees can get their own payroll info. So they streamline the whole process and reduce that risk of errors. But remember, technology is just a tool.
Right.
You still need knowledgeable HR people who understand payroll management. You need them to oversee the process, make sure everything's running smoothly.
So it's not like a set it and forget it.
No, not at all.
You need human oversight.
Absolutely. Technology can help automate, but the human element, that's what ensures accuracy.
Hmm.
Interprets data, troubleshoots issues, keeps the system running. It's a partnership.
Okay, so a partnership. This is all so interesting. I'm seeing payroll management as this, like dance between humans and technology, where both play a role in making sure it all works.
Yeah.
But what happens when things go wrong? Technology isn't perfect, mistakes can happen.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the challenges?
Yeah.
How do businesses navigate those situations?
That's a great question. You're right. Even with the best systems in place, there are always going to be challenges. I think one of the biggest hurdles is keeping up with all the regulations that are constantly changing.
Oh, yeah.
Tax laws, labor laws, it's always evolving, you
Uh-huh.
know. It can be a real pain to stay on top of it.
It's like trying to hit a moving target. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, the rules change again.
Damn it.
I bet data security is a big concern too, right? With all the personal information.
Oh, absolutely. Payroll data, it's a prime target for all those cyber criminals out there. Businesses really need to have strong security measures in place to protect all that.
Mhm.
Strong passwords, encryption, audits, all those things are essential to protect that data.
It's a scary thought. It really makes you realize how important it is to choose the right providers and, have those security measures in place. But even beyond those external threats, there's also the challenge of managing all the variability within a company's payroll.
Mm.
We talked about overtime, commissions, bonuses, all those things that fluctuate.
Yeah.
Makes it really hard to ensure accuracy.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's always the possibility of human error, even with the best of intentions.
Right.
We're all human.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of potential pitfalls. What are some of the best practices that businesses can implement to kind of minimize all that risk?
Well, like we talked about, automation's key. Using payroll software to automate those calculations, tax filings, compliance checks, that can really reduce the risk of errors.
Okay, yeah, less manual work means fewer mistakes. What else?
Timely processing is super important. Having a clear payroll schedule and really sticking to it, that helps to avoid delays and keeps employees happy. Nobody wants to wait for their paycheck.
That's for sure. I get a little anxious if mine's even a day late. It really makes you realize how important it is to have a system in place, a system you can count on. What about communication? What role does that play in effective payroll management?
That's a great point. Clear, open communication with employees is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
Keeping them in the loop about payroll policies, tax withholdings, pay schedules, all that really goes a long way. Prevents confusion and frustration.
Transparency is always a good thing, especially when we're talking about something as important as people's paychecks. What about those audits we talked about before? How often should those be happening?
Regular audits are like checkups for your payroll system. They should be done at least once a year. But depending on, the size and complexity of your payroll, more frequent audits might be needed. Audits help identify and correct errors before they become big problems. It's all about staying proactive.
So it's not enough to just set up a system and hope for the best. You need to be constantly monitoring and evaluating, making adjustments, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Right. And that's why investing in training for your HR team is so important. They need to be up to speed on payroll laws, systems, procedures, so they can manage everything effectively and avoid those costly mistakes. It's an investment that's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, it's all about empowering your team with what they need to succeed. I know we've been focusing on the kind of technical and operational side of payroll, but I'd love to talk about the human side of this. How does payroll management affect employees on a personal level?
That's a great question. Payroll isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people's lives. When it's managed effectively, it creates stability and security. Employees know that they can rely on their paycheck. It lets them focus on their work and, their personal life without added stress. It's about peace of mind, knowing that you're being paid fairly for your hard work.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of relief when you see that deposit hit your account,
Yeah.
You can breathe a little easier. But what happens when things go wrong? What are the consequences for employees when there are payroll issues?
Well, it can really create a ripple effect of stress and anxiety, right? It impacts their ability to pay bills, to meet all their financial obligations, even just to feel secure in their job. It's a reminder that payroll management has real-world consequences for people. It's not just some abstract concept.
Yeah. It really highlights that human side of this process. It's
Yeah.
about livelihoods, well-being, the ability to take care of yourself and your family.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for businesses to prioritize accuracy, compliance, and, just transparency in those processes. It's about treating your employees with respect, recognizing their value.
It's about that positive work environment where people feel valued and appreciated and secure, knowing that they're going to get paid, that their hard work is being recognized and rewarded.
Well said. So I know we've covered a lot of ground here. Do you want to take a minute to recap for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. We've learned that accuracy is super important in payroll management. Even small errors can have a big impact. Compliance with all those changing tax and labor laws is non-negotiable. Technology can be a huge help, but human expertise is still so important. Clear communication with employees is key. And finally, we really explore that human impact of payroll. It's not just numbers. It's about people's lives, their well-being.
Fantastic summary.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've been talking about automation and technology and payroll. But as technology continues to change so quickly, what do you think about the future of payroll? What trends do you see? And how has technology got to continue to shape all of this?
That's a great question. I think we're going to see more automation, more integration of payroll processes with other HR functions. Think about like seamless systems that manage everything from recruiting and onboarding to benefits and performance reviews, all connected to payroll. It's about a more kind of holistic and efficient approach, managing that whole employee life cycle.
So a more streamlined system where everything's talking to each other,
Yeah,
getting rid of all those silos and things that can cause errors.
exactly.
That sounds incredibly efficient, but also a little daunting. What about artificial intelligence? Do you see that playing a bigger role in the future?
Definitely. AI is already making a difference in areas like fraud detection and compliance monitoring, and I think we're going to see even more uses in the next few years. Imagine AI algorithms that can predict potential problems before they even happen, so businesses can be proactive.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like the future of payroll is exciting and challenging. What advice would you give to businesses and HR professionals who are trying to keep up with all this?
Embrace change and stay ahead of the curve. Invest in training and development for your team. Keep up with all the new trends and technologies, and, don't be afraid to experiment.
Be adaptable, be curious, be willing to learn and grow.
Exactly. And never underestimate that human connection. Technology can help with efficiency and accuracy, but it's the human element that builds trust, creates a positive work environment.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, using technology but not losing that human connection.
Well said. It's been great talking about this today.
It's been great. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too. It's been a fascinating look into a system we often take for granted, but a system that plays such an important role in all our lives. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up for today. Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, just remember,
Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your money.
keep learning.
And that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining us on our deep dive into the world of payroll management. We'll catch you next time for another one.